Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Toonkind at 12 FPS. Today we are doing a fun impromptu FPS because RJ is being so kind as to indulge me. Say hi, RJ.
Hello.
Um, Shenanigans are happening. Uh, Stuff is going on, TM.
TM.
Uh, and I wanted to play more D&D today, so
Real. LMAO.
because I haven't played D&D in ages. So RJ, where exactly is Decimal?
So Decimal is somewhere in Halloween Town. Um, the exact specifics of where are kind of up to the whims of Kara at any given point. Um, but he he senses bullfuckery afoot, as he so often does, and is just kind of wandering around. I feel like at this point, just to facilitate convenience, and also because I can literally facilitate convenience, this is what he does. He's probably like on the same street as Network right now.
Mm-hmm. So then he would notice as everything around him goes from standard Halloween Town goth muted color palette to purely black and white. Or rather, more sepia toned. Correct?
Oh yeah, for sure he notices that.
And if he didn't notice that, he would notice as the air goes dead. No wind, no movement, no sound.
Mm-hmm.
Well, little sound. But little sound don't make sense. Because he can hear rain, but it is not raining.
Yeah. Um,
So how's he doing?
I think his immediate instinct is to put a hand on the closest wall and try and sense Kara.
Um, so I guess that's a question for you as to, I have a reason that Decimal would be exempt from Retro's bullshit. Would Kara be?
I'm inclined to say no, because while Kara is uncanny, Kara is not on the level of gods.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, in terms of sensing Kara's presence, the presence is there, but it is frozen, almost like it's asleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. he he picks up on that and then just quietly goes, hmm. And I guess starts looking around, see if he can see an obvious source.
Um, is Matthias's window street facing? Hex, if you could leave a
That's a
comment
yes
in
from
FPS
Hex.
rules, I'd appreciate it. Okay, it is. Okay, so immediate source, no. Interesting detail, yes. There is the flickering of light from Matthias's window, like that of a candle flame.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, and as he's kind of watching that, after a moment, that goes out.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, and then roll perception for me.
Yeah, happily. Right. Shoot back up to the top of his character sheet. Perception. Not terrible. It's a 25.
Oh, not terrible. It's a 25.
It's a 12 on the dice. That's fairly middling.
I know, I have to roast you for it though. Yeah, so suffice to say, unlike your something, you do not get jump scared. Because you are hyper aware of this strange, not quite silence, and so you hear when there are footsteps approaching beside you.
This is where I have to roll a thing and then roll another thing because I forgot to roll the first thing before we started. Uh, ooh, that's not great. That's better. That's so much better. Okay, that's fine. This rolls advantage then. That's his pain die. He went from a 10 to a 1. That's cocked. That's pretty good. Okay. Um. Cool. Okay. So that's a casual dirty 30 on that side of hand check. As he pulls a card into his hand and very
Mm-hmm.
casually turns around.
And Decimal has never seen Matthias's patron, has he?
No, he has not.
So, standing behind and a little to the side of him is a rather short, heavy set Toonkind ish. Honestly, as you watch, her design shifts from something a little more exaggerated to something very real kind esque, similar to yours. Um, but she is still very visibly attuned. A woman with curly blonde hair and bright, glowing golden eyes. Um, who dressed pretty casually, white button down, dark brown slacks with lighter brown pinstripes, that sort of thing. And she kind of has one hand tucked into her pocket and she tilts her head. You're not going to want to be out here much longer.
You going to tell me why?
And she kind of gives a little bit of a smile and shrugs and says, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Depends on if you'll listen to me.
Well, given what you've done to the place, I think it would probably be in my best interest to.
And she kind of looks around at the sepia tonedness of everything and kind of shrugs and says, this is more just the consequence of my being invited. And her eyes kind of flick over to the woods. And it's kind of because Decimal is on street level, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of harder to see than it was from Matthias's window. But there is some kind of gold light coming through the trees.
Decimal looks at that and then looks at Retro. And roll me perception really quick.
Sure. What's your Percepi modifier?
God.
Ironically, her passive is better than her bonus.
If you got observant, that'd do it. But your
That's gonna
passive is always going to
be
be better than your bonus because it's 10 plus your bonus.
ah 13 plus 25. 38.
38. Okay. Well, that definitely beats Decimal's terrible fucking roll of 23. Yeah, 23. He rolled a 4 on the dice, so, um, yeah.
One
Uh,
second.
I really do feel like I have to reiterate that Decimal is a level 11 rogue. He has access to reliable talent, and he has access to a lot of proficiencies. So when he rolls for a lot of skills, he will just get a 10 by default.
I'm back. What did I
Welcome back.
miss?
Yeah, so she does not miss the quick as a flash glance up at Matthias' window. And then Decimal shifts slightly. Um, Settling his weight a little more evenly, rather than leaning a little harder on his right leg. And he goes, "Well, you feel like memoir, but I suspect it was Matthias that summoned you."
Um, you actually get a little bit of a side glance and a look of mild respect for that because first glance most people aren't going to notice that she feels similar to Memoir.
You listen. That's a fucking 38 perception check. You can tell this cat has been on high alert for fucking years.
Yeah. And she kind of nods and says, "Yeah, we had a little bit of a conversation. I saw you on my way out, and I figured, well, he probably would prefer if I didn't let you get turned into roadkill come morning."
Say again.
And she kind of gives him like the "I said what I said" look.
Okay. Rephrase. Why would I be roadkill come morning?
Well, it is what tends to happen if you pass out in the middle of an active street.
Why would I pass out in the middle of an active street?
She gives another glance towards the woods.
What does that have to do with me?
And she kind of, God damn it, Russia. Why are you insistent on being unhelpful?
Because she hates everything that he stands for on principle. Like, we've been new on this one.
She doesn't hate everything he stands for. She just hates the power he draws from or is a part of. She kind of shrugs a shoulder and like raises an eyebrow and sort of says, "Do you want to stand here and let me lecture you on it, or do you want to get out of the street?"
And he just, like, sighs. And,
And she like spreads she spreads her hands like, "I mean, hey, I'm fine with moving you after you pass out. It'd certainly be easier, but that's your choice."
there's a distinct thought in his head, and is like, that is just like, is this what it's like to deal with me when I'm at my most in a snit? But he does, start walking.
And she will start leading the way.
Yeah. He doesn't actually go toward a network, though.
Hmm,
He actually moves towards an alley nearby,
hmm, okay,
and elects to sit himself down on a stack of boxes. And then just,
okay.
like, gestures at her, like, well.
And she kind of, I think from this position they do have a slightly better view. Um, she kind of glances out um through, like, I'm guessing from this alley you could probably like see the junkyard, so through the junkyard through to the woods
Yeah.
where that light is getting slowly brighter. And Decimal, I'm gonna have you roll me an Arcana.
Not something that he's good at. I'm going to guidance this one. That's cocked. Okay, that's not terrible. What's your intelligence modifier? +3. So that is 15 plus 3, so it's 15 plus 6, 21.
21. Okay. Yeah, so Decimal, you kind of become aware of, like, as you're sitting down, as you're no longer in motion, you become aware of a sensation of magic around you, of things were already slowed to a stop. Somehow they are being pulled even slower. Basically, the second had already been halted. Now it is being stretched into more time.
Mm-hmm. He, like, eyes narrow, as his scant magic that he's able to actively wield kicks in for a second, and then he just deliberately turns to Retro. He doesn't say anything, but the "what the hell is this" is very clear.
She kind of shrugs and says, like I said, I think Matthias prefers you not roadkill.
Okay, but that doesn't explain what's happening. Why it affects any of us. Why it affects me specifically.
Because you agreed for it too?
Okay, roll insight at disadvantage here.
Yeah, sure.
You're gonna get a really
I'm just
good
gonna use
result anyway, but
I'm just gonna use D&V here because I
that's
don't
totally
like
fine.
having to type in the command. Okay, so do you want a 39 or a 41?
39 it is then. Um, yeah, okay. How do I put this? It's it's almost easy for Retro to see past the, because like he bristles the moment she says that. And it's very easy for her to see past the surface level anger to the bolt of panic underneath. But what she almost misses and just barely catches at the end, um, is that underneath that is actually another layer of anger. One that runs a lot deeper that I don't think that she has context for. And he just very exactingly goes, I did not make any kind of agreements without full awareness of what I was doing, and I very specifically do not recall agreeing to any of this.
And she kind of raises an eyebrow at him and gestures to the woods and says, what exactly is in that direction?
Several things. Be specific.
Who exactly is usually in that direction?
Right. Well, I'm not one of yours. So, what does this have to do with me?
You definitely are not one of mine, but you are one of his. And she
And
kind of frowns and says, sorry, go ahead.
he just, like deliberately lets his hackles lower a bit and just is like the squinting is now less bristling and now just sort of thoughtful, and he just goes, I can count on one hand the number of times that he and I have interacted properly.
And yet here we are. And Decimal, you are also free to roll insight.
Fuck yeah.
Yours will also be a disadvantage because she is not going easy on you the way she did for Matthias.
Okay, well that was a 5 on the dice and then a 2 on the dice, so it's a 10. Plus 13, that's 23 plus 2, 25.
Okay. Yeah, so she, she says, and yet here we are. And you can tell that she's not particularly pleased. There is something of an irritation there. Of like, yeah, no, she also knows that you and the person you are both talking about have barely interacted. And yet here we are. And she doesn't get it. But sure, why the fuck not?
He like pauses and regards her. And tips his head just a little bit. And then he goes, I'm guessing your immediate distaste for me has something to do with my maker, which is understandable. But your reaction implies that you did not cause this.
Ha! Absolutely not.
So what did?
Same thing that always makes things break. Time and pressure. Leave something alone for long enough and it'll rot.
That's not quite true, but sure, why not?
It was coming eventually. I didn't have time to do a good enough job with making this one, but didn't expect it to be this violent.
And that still doesn't explain what this has to do with me. What did I choose?
You chose to get involved. You have a habit of doing that.
I think you overestimate that.
Do I really?
He just kind of very deliberately resettle his sleeves so that the chain marks around his wrists are showing.
Mm-hmm. And she shrugs, and she turns her gaze away from the woods and back to glance over towards Network. Doesn't say anything. In her head, she's kind of going, you keep choosing to interact with mine. You chose to interact with Matthias. You chose at certain points to go interact with Memoir. She's not altogether pleased about it, but here we are.
Eat pant.
What?
Eat pant.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
I will learn you what that reference is later. Okay, she looks away, and Decimal is still just like watching her, and kind of closes his eyes and exhales a little bit, and then goes, if I ask you again, will you give me something resembling a straight answer?
Um, it really is like interacting with a version of yourself at your worst, Decimal. Because she just kind of hums and raises an eyebrow and says, "You can certainly try."
If I ask again, will you give me something resembling a straight answer? Not for myself, but so that I can better aid those you call yours. Because if I'm in this, I might as well be useful.
That, hmm. Again, you'll have to roll insight to get the depths of the reaction, but that does get a reaction.
Well, that's good. Flat or
Uh, Still disadvantaged because she is still putting up a wall. I'm so sorry.
wow? Okay, I rolled a 19 on the first one and a 20 on the second. Um, so ooh,
Damn.
19 plus 1 on the guidance is 20 plus 13. That's 33.
Yeah, okay, that makes it. So it's not shock or surprise. There is. She is not shocked that that is his motivation. She is surprised by his willingness to be blunt about it.
He just kind of rolls his eyes and goes, "You know, probably better than I do, that I am nothing but a tool to be used."
Boy, rolling off your 30, uh, you see something very, very stormy flash in her eyes at that statement. Which, if you would recall the Chaos and Time and a Very Confused Real Kind FPS, you have seen from Memoir before.
Yeah. Like, she doesn't even need to roll with her modifier. She knows that he's being very specific to him. He's not saying that
Mm-hmm.
she would do that, he's saying that she knows his maker and knows what it thinks and knows what it does. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it still pisses her off.
yeah.
She doesn't like people as tools to the narrative. It bothers her. Um, but she doesn't comment on it. There is that moment of that internal storm. And then she shoves it in a closet and says, "Deal with that later." Um, and she sighs and says, "You weren't incorrect about a year ago when you said that I did a poor job making my most recent incarnation. I did it on last minute's notice, and he is not very well put together, and in those circumstances, when certain things happen and certain influences pile up, the stress point for fractures is a lot lower. And given the specific circumstances of the. She kind of rolls her eyes and waves a hand through the air. General bullshit you lot are all involved in. The reaction to that fracture is a lot more explosive than is typical of even my worst work. Um, and I'm gonna give you one more fun thing from that 30 insight.
Mm-hmm.
As she talks about Memoir, there is a very strong sense of distaste.
Is that distaste for memoir? Or for the circumstances that brought him about?
It's a little of both. It's she doesn't like the circumstances and she doesn't like she doesn't hmm. I will let you put this together because you've got that reaction of, the frustration at people as tools, as necessities, etc. There is some kind of connection there. Memoir was created out of necessity and out of panic, and therefore Retro does not like that and does not have particularly fond feelings.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's very much the way somebody would talk about, for example, a project that they heard about last minute and then were forced to do a rush job on, but that needed to get done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Decimal's eyes narrow. And he leans forward just a little bit and goes, is he going to survive this?
That is entirely up to the rest of you.
Hmm. Decimal looks back toward the light. You recognize the look on his face. It's unfamiliar, but familiar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's it looks different because it's on someone else's face, but you've seen that look in, I'm going to say the mirror because I assume memory lane has at least one, but it could be any reflective surface. Um, when you've seen a thread line that you don't like and you go, you know what? No, we're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And Decimal just very quietly goes, well, that would upset um that would upset people that are relying on me. We can't have that.
And she kind of doesn't give that much of a reaction. Um, there's internally, she's kind of laughing at the idea that, you know, the irony of Decimal of all people having a very similar reaction to her. Because gestures at them.
Mm-hmm.
So internally, she is kind of laughing at that. Uh, but she kind of doesn't give much visual reaction. And instead kind of glances at the boxes he's perched himself on and kind of hums and is just, yeah, sure, that's stable.
Oh, then these will last until the sun's rise.
True.
Besides, I've woken up in worse places.
That's not better. You realize that's not better, right?
It wasn't supposed to be.
I don't know what he sees in you.
If I'm being honest, neither do I. I don't understand what any of them see in me. But they have chosen that, and for better or worse, I must honor that.
Ugh. If I were a different sort of patron, this would, of course, be the place where I try to lecture you or pressure you into not having anything to do with Matthias. But she shrugs.
Decimal just grins and he says, "Well, lucky you, because all that would do is make me want to do it anyway. Purely out of spite."
Oh, yes, because spite is your favorite motivator.
If it works.
She rolls her eyes and just says, well, we've weft or not, you make him happy. That's what's important.
And if I didn't, I'm sure you'd be happy to erase me from existence, right?
That gets a massive roll of the eyes. Yes, because I'm well known for being a mass murdering psychopath.
Oh, it's hardly mass murder, it's just the one. Come now.
You really think I'm that petty?
I think you
Did I
view...
erase keys from existence?
Oh no, you sent him there.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, you give me no reason to consider that you won't.
Trust me, if I didn't want you here, you wouldn't be.
Something tells me that's not up to you.
Hmm? Sorry, didn't catch that?
He said, something tells me that's not up to you.
She kind of hums in irritation. Because unfortunately, he's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, if she, purged him from existence, this version of him would be gone, but knowing the weave, it would probably just make another one.
Yup.
She kind of just grumbles about that.
He lets her grumble for a moment, and then wraps his fingers on the box and goes, "So what do we need to do to make sure that Memoir in some form makes it out of this alive?"
And she kind of looks at him almost appraisingly, almost like she's trying to tell. Like, she knows why he's asking. But there's still that part of her that's like, okay, what's your angle, in a sense?
He doesn't look at her as he talks, but he just goes, "Well, as a piece of shoddy work myself, I rather appreciate him. Besides, more importantly, um, there are people that I know that would be inconsolable if he was gone. I'd rather not have to deal with that."
And she kind of snorts and shakes her head and says, grief is messy.
Grief is always messy.
And she kind of looks up over the woods at that lightning like fractal of lines and cracks and fracture points and says, well, from the look of it, it's a full shatter, not an implosion or a decay. So, the bad thing about that is that it's incredibly violent and incredibly dangerous. The good thing about it is there's something to put back together.
But will that relieve the pressure? Was it just setting up to another shatter anew?
it's less relieving the pressure and more creating a system that can handle it.
Built-in redundancies. What a unique
Hmm?
thought.
Sorry, what?
He said built-in redundancies. What a unique thought.
And she kind of. Okay, this is actually me, Gail. Remind me what built-in redundancies means.
A system that is designed to withstand certain operational pressures, usually by offloading them in some fashion or just, being capable of handling them. But if one
Yeah,
part fails, there are other parts there that can take the strain and do the job.
yeah. And she nods and says, I can't see him the way I can the rest of you, but from what I understand, he was already trying to do that. Went too far, too drastic, pulled from all of you, which is a terrible idea. Because you've all got your own flaws to deal with, so he was just piling on more pressure. He's mortal, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Somebody else messing up my job. And she, she does like mutter to herself a bit. I don't know if any of that caught on the mic actually.
It did catch on the mic. And Decimal very, very obviously bites back a comment about that.
um, and she bites her own tongue and shakes her head. There is something of use in each of those splinters. It's just a matter of figuring out what is actually true and helpful.
Well, considering the people likely to get pulled in, if I'm understanding your meaning correctly, 50-50 shot.
Huh?
He's
What
making
was
fun
that
of
last
he's making
sentence?
fun of the group. He said, 50-50 shot.
Damn. Ruthless. She kind of grimaces and says, well, I've had worse odds.
You'll be fine. You've got someone who can literally manipulate luck on your side. As much as I'm sure you hate that.
She does, like, yeah, she Muppet scrunches a bit and scowls at the idea of luck.
Shit-eating grin on this stupid cat's face.
She doesn't like luck. She kind of says, I've always preferred the kind of luck that you make yourself. Don't.
Well, that's just chaos in motion.
Well, then you should feel right at home.
God, you really do hate me, don't you? That's delightful.
You personally, no. The thing that you draw your power from, we are not on speaking terms.
I wouldn't say it's draw power necessarily, but well, you do you.
I don't like inevitability.
And yet it exists. Nothing lasts forever. I feel like you know that
Doesn't
better than
have
anyone.
to. Doesn't have to last forever, but
The beauty in life is that it ends.
yes, yes, trust me, I'm aware. And she kind of shoots him a look. Like, yeah, you're telling that to the goddess who's responsible for moving people to the afterlife.
He just, like, raises a hand, like, let me finish. The beauty in life is that it ends. But I think you've gotten tired of seeing that end. you've completely forgotten to look at the rest of it. There is hope in a tragedy. And that's coming from the most bitter and sardonic person that I know. So, maybe there's something to it.
She kind of hums. There's hope in a tragedy that you survive.
Perhaps.
Can't exactly have hope if you're not there to experience it.
Perhaps. But if there are no stakes, then there is no consequence, and then there is no point. Lessons are left useless for the dead, but that's not the point.
She kind of frowns, but she does consider what he's saying. It's, as we have established outside
Yeah.
of game, fundamentally contrastant viewpoints of someone who is, near divine level of power, but still within the world living and experiencing a life, versus someone who looks at it from the outside and can never fully be a part of it, and who has made her eternity and kept herself sane via the fixing and preventing of thought to be inevitable tragedy.
I think
She
that's.
can see. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go first. You go first.
She can kind of see where he's coming from. She can see what he means. And she kind of laughs and looks back towards the woods and says, "Who knows? Maybe if you guys mess up enough, I'll have the capacity to understand that."
Look at it this way. I don't know what you did to pull Matthias out of the thrall, but doing that didn't change what happened. They all still died. The thrall still came into existence. Ongham is still around. We're all still in danger. Ultimately, the tragedy remains. It's just that there's now one more person left to witness it. And sure, that person can go on to live a full and happy life. God's providing, and I'm certain that you will.
I do my best.
That doesn't change what happened. The
Because
tragedy
it
is
didn't want to be changed.
the
I
tragedy
tried.
the tragedy is still there, but that doesn't make it meaningless.
They deserved better than to be tools in someone else's narrative. To just be footnotes on history.
Not everyone can be some great and glorious hero with a destiny that outstrips them and their legacy. You need to
They don't
have
have to be,
you need to have
but they
someone.
deserve to be happy.
It's not as simple as that. Ultimately, the universe as a whole is a cold and unfeeling place. Any happiness is wrenched from it with our blood and sweat and tears. Maybe you can see the tapestry. I can't from where I'm sat. But the tragedies of make life are what make life worth living. Because if there's no sadness, then there's no joy.
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase what she's thinking. Because he is getting under her skin a bit.
Yeah, I suspected he would.
He is getting under her skin a bit in the sense of the two of them are talking about what she sees as fundamentally different things. There is a difference between struggle that gives meaning to joy and the lived equivalent of fridging. She doesn't like the idea that anyone should be born or fated or destined to simply have their life cut short to tell someone else's story. Because every life that gets cut short passes through her hands on its way to whatever comes next. And she can see all the potential those lives had. And it bothers her.
Yeah.
It comes from the fact, I think, that Decimal is looking at this from the perspective of a person living a life, whereas Retro is coming at it from the perspective of someone looking in on a story.
It's characters as people versus characters as tools. Or characters as tropes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's their fundamental disconnect. Because
Mm-hmm.
while yes, she is considering um everyone that she saves, she is considering as a person with a whole life left to live. She is also considering them as a tool to tell a story,
Mm-hmm.
even if that story is their own. Especially if that story is their own. But they're still serving the same purpose. They're still telling a story. It's not
Mm-hmm.
as real for her as it is for Decimal being a person who lives in this world.
Yeah. And like she certainly wouldn't phrase it that way, but you're also not wrong.
Hmm.
She doesn't like the idea of people as tools, but at the same time, she is fundamentally disconnected from the world, especially when she does not have the mortal half of her soul. She can care and she can want to make things better, and that can make her a wonderful friend and patron. But at the end of the day, that is still a fucking god.
Yeah.
More than that, that is still a primordial god.
Yeah.
That is still the living embodiment of the concept of personal memory. And I think what what would become obvious as she kind of sits and mulls over what Decimal has said is she understands where he's coming from. She cannot see it because she sees too much.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And she kind of sighs. She doesn't exactly glare at him, but she does give him a look.
He just smirks at her.
Ugh, you are insufferable.
I try.
And she kind of scowls at him for that, just seriously.
He smirks at her a little bit longer, and then reaches up and takes off his hat, puts it down on the box next to him, props his cane up nearby, and settles as comfortably as he can. Uh, and then I think he just goes, well, we've already stretched this moment out into a lifetime. Might as well get it over with.
You sure you're situated?
I'm a cat. I can lie on anything. I'll be fine.
That does get a snort. And she says, all right, it's your spine in the morning.
Imagine having a
Uh,
spine. Couldn't be me.
yeah, sure. Uh, good luck with the noise. And then she, the whole time she's been talking to you, she has had one hand in her pocket. And she takes her hand out of her pocket, and her fingers are poised for a snap. Which is what she's had her hand doing this whole time because she's been holding the moment still. She snaps her fingers, and Decimal also has a piece of echo glass, right?
Yes. Ordinarily, it would be, in his hammer space. This is where I'm gonna have to roll for hammer space and hope I don't fumble. I did not fumble, thank God. Yeah, he pulls it out. Pulls it out and has it ready.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
it's now set
as
into a bracelet.
ooh, nice. As Retro snaps her fingers, he sees a spot of bright golden light in the center of that piece of glass that flares brighter and brighter in time with the cracks spreading through the sky. And just as with Matthias in the previous FPS, he hears one scream that turns into a chorus, that turns into the shriek of metal against glass, and ends with a horrible shattering sound. And then everything goes dark.